Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the OK Grognard Show. It is Sunday, September 13th, 2020, 9:30 a.m. Central in beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. It's Sunday, and that means it is Rules Retrospective Day. Got a bit of a confession to make. The past handful of weeks, I've been going through the character classes and discussing how I use them personally when I play First Edition AD&D, when I'm DMing, and some things about how I run them too, I suppose. And at the end of the day, I thought I would just make an episode at the end talking about the two character classes and the one race I don't use, and just let that stand as its own one episode, right? And I don't use the assassin, and I don't use the monk, and I don't use half orcs. And even with alignments, I'm a bit restrictive in some people's eyes because I don't allow evil player characters in my campaign, which might explain some of the above. The bottom line for me is that evil monsters, villains, are the purview of the dungeon master, and player characters in the campaigns I run are meant to be heroic, or at least try to be. That's the game I like to run. Some people say, well, yeah, but what if all your players want to do? Well, all my players will need to get a different DM because I run the games I want to run. It's a lot of work running games. It's, uh, you know, you can't just show up and run games. You really do have to spend time thinking about things, perhaps writing stuff up. Now, maybe you can get away with this periodically, and you write up so much stuff in one prep session that you're good for 2 or 3 weeks or whatever. But it takes time. And if I'm going to put that kind of time into something, not just show up like I'm turning on a TV show once a week, like some players will do, they'll spend no time in between games whatsoever, and that's fine. That's why you play. You want to take some time out of your busy week to go enjoy a game, little escapism, have some fun. It shouldn't be like work, but for a dungeon master, it is like work in some aspects of it, and it's not work that is begrudged. It's not work that we don't want to do. We didn't want to do. We just simply wouldn't do it. So it's good. It's good fun, but evil's out when I run games. Saying that, then it's easy to understand why assassins are out. Monks just don't fit the medieval fantasy milieu as I run it. My monks are robed figures from monasteries that are basically working for small corporations, because it's, in essence what monasteries were. They were work machines. Sometimes their product was prayer, but most of the time their product was one crop or another, grapes or something, some sort of consumable. And my monks are that sort of hooded figure from Western Europe. Now, I don't run modern religions or real world religions in my campaign, so my monks are not devoted to a real world concept of a deity or religion or anything along those lines. So let's make sure we mention that. But nevertheless, monasteries and monks are not the hand-to-hand fighters of the Eastern Hemisphere that monks in Dungeons and Dragons happen to be. So I just don't use those in my setting. So no assassins, because there's no evil. Assassins are by their nature evil. No monks. And no half orcs, because there's an implied conception for a character who becomes a half orc in 99.9% of the cases. It's implied that sexual assault was involved. And I don't want that as the basis for something in my campaign. I don't want it to. I don't want it to be a discussion. I don't want it to take away from people's escapism time. I don't want it to be there lurking in the background to potentially trigger people. I don't personally like the idea that it was part of the game. Now, I'm not saying against anybody who wrote the game or anybody who worked with the game or anybody who played the game over the years. I'm saying that if at this point in your lives you think that's okay, well, then you've got to justify that between you and your players and whoever else is aware of your game and the fact that you include that. I don't, because I don't use it. But if you do, understand that it is fair for people to bring up the fact that you do and to discuss it in terms that may be unflattering to you for utilizing it as part of your game. So be ready for that and understand that that's a cross you bear because you choose, dug in your heels about not eliminating this from your games. So keep that in mind. That's personal choice. I believe in DM agency. I'm not going to take it away from you. But heads up. Smell the coffee. Understand it's out there that this is not a good thing. And be aware of it. Now, a lot of people will say, and this is fair too, that authors who write books that include characters that do certain things, sexual assault, some other heinous things, murder, torture, various other things, that doesn't mean that the author condones that. But this is a role-playing game. This is not a book where you're in control of every word that gets put on paper. And, editors and publishers aside, as a writer, you know what you're putting on paper, and what sees print is most likely the gist of what you were writing, almost to a word. So that's a different situation. That you in control of the narrative, literally from start to finish. As a DM, you're not. So if you have, like I say, when I run my sandbox games, I am just putting story elements into a setting. I'm allowing the players to go around and pick up those story elements and through gameplay piece them into what becomes a story. Might not be a great story, might be absolutely fantastic, but through gameplay comes a story. I'm not forcing the story on people. By putting the story element of half orcs as a player character on the table, I'm allowing other people who will eventually, through gameplay, create a story to include that as a story element. And what they do with it, it's not in my control. So, what is in my control is whether or not it's a story element that's available to begin with. That's what I have to take responsibility for. So, there you go. So, no assassins, no monks, no half-orcs, no evil. And I will say that I also frown on chaotic neutral. Too many people, I'm afraid, play chaotic neutral as if it's a license to do whatever you want. At any given moment, you can do any random thing you want and justify it as you don't care whether something's right or wrong. And the games I run, as I said, are meant to be heroic. At least the attempt should be there to be heroes on the part of the player characters. And they should also be products of teamwork. I want all the players to be connected and to play with one another as part of a team. I don't want loose cannons. I don't want 6 loose cannons off doing anything they want, anywhere they want. Because first of all, I don't want to run 6 games simultaneously, giving everybody 10 minutes of each hour if there's 6 players, or 12 minutes. Chaotic Greedy. Grendel Wolfslayer as chaotic neutral equals chaotic greedy. Well, I have definitely seen that aspect of it. It can also just be wacky, insane, crazy, random, and that's it's all disruptive to the game, in my opinion. There is playing chaotic and being chaotic. Yeah, you're right. Sometimes you can be the most lawful of individual players, people in the real world, and you can approach showing your character is chaotic neutral in a very lawful, if you will, or orderly manner. But yeah, I downplay it. I make sure that I'm aware of who the player is and know that they can handle running a chaotic neutral character without ruining the game for every other person in the game. And that's tricky to do. You got to know people. So sometimes it's best just to say up front, look, I don't want anybody, like I said, no assassins, no monks, no half-orcs, no evil in my campaigns, and chaotic neutral. Maybe somewhere down the line you could play a chaotic neutral character, I might say, to a new group of players. But at the outset, let's just leave that away, out of the options. Let's just leave that off the table. Let's just say that that's not available. And of course, players that play in my games over time realize that I use alignment to gauge how players have been playing, not to force them to play a certain way. So eventually they realize, well, they can do anything they want. Now the problem is if you do enough evil things or do something seriously very evil, then I let you have your character to continue to play until the end of the session, at which point he becomes an NPC. So enjoy it while it lasts. If you can find some way of redeeming yourself prior to the end of the game session, more power to you. But once the game session ends for that night, for that afternoon, whatever it is, that character becomes mine as an NPC. And now I have an NPC who really knows a lot of the ins and outs of the parties in a lot of cases. They may know secrets. They certainly know where he's been with you. So they know details about equipment you're carrying, what might be worth beating you up to take, or killing you to take even. And they're evil now, so they're gonna do more evil things as an NPC than they ever did, than you ever dreamed of. Trust me on that. Um, where we are then is you roll up a new character, so don't be evil in my campaigns because the last you'll play that particular character. If this happens session after session after session, where every session you decide you're going to do something evil, who cares if you lose your character and then you just got to roll up a new one? Well, at some point I'm just going to stop inviting you to the game because that's no fun for me. And if I'm not having fun, then I'm not running the game. That's just the bottom line. So everybody should be having fun at the table, including the DM. So there's some rules for you. The DM is a player who also should be having fun. It says so in here somewhere. Go forth and have fun, I think was the expression. I think I've got we'll use this one. So, pick a rule. Pick something out. I wanted to do a sort of a random first edition Dungeon Master's Guide rule thing and talk about how I use it. We're going to put this right here. Boom. I just started scrolling down and I saw money and I clicked on it because that's how I am. So, money, so they say. I think I just talked about this last time, is that when it comes to money, I like a decimal system. I like making it easy. Lexfire, good morning. How you doing? Yeah, players do forget they're playing with others sometimes, Grendel. Grendel Wolf Slayer. Not so silent, Bob. So if the player group makes a choice, well, I don't run for that player group, Bob, but you know what? I banned you from the channel using a different name, so you've obviously decided to come back. And I'm going to have to report you, little Bobby. Evading a block ban or suspension. There you go. There you go. There you go. Well, we'll submit the report. There we go. Sorry, everybody. Had to deal with that individual. He's actually a local player who got booted from the game store. In fact, he didn't really get booted from the game store. He was asked to take a break from the game store because he kept recruiting people for other game stores while he was there and mouthing off about the game store. This is all predates me being a manager there, but at a certain point into being a manager, I had to ask him to take a break from the store unless he could stop that behavior, and he opted to decide that was him being banned, and then went off. Took a total, went south, whatever you want to say, online about the whole thing. And at that point, the owner said, well, if he's going to be that way, then he just banned himself, and that's all we can do about it. So, there you go. Is that picture bottom right the official appraisal skill? Yeah, might well be. Hate it when villains are too clever for their own selves. Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, see, that's this guy though. This guy is just he's just a knucklehead. Sad thing is, he's the brother of a very good gamer friend of mine who I've been gaming with until COVID hit, once or twice a week for, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years, something like that. Long time. I'm gonna say 8 years, 7 years at least. But he's just a problem. He could have stayed silent and stuck around and probably enjoyed the show. But his problem is he just doesn't know when to quit. He gets something under his skin and he decides it's a crusade. It's very obsessive, which is a shame because it speaks to needing some help. He seriously needs some help, and he won't seek it. And he's got a family who, sadly, are probably going to wind up being part of the fallout when he really goes south. So we'll see what happens, but he needs help. He's it's a shame. Anywho, not everyone has an eyeglass +2 for gem value determination. Yeah, right. That is the. That's what the illustration is kind of showing off there, isn't it? Let's have a look closer. Well, we wasted a couple of minutes on this guy. Is that a Darlene? Yeah, that's a Darlene, right? What else do we got we want to talk about on this? I was going to do random unusual rules from the DMG. You know what's fun? All right, so check this out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. There are 16 appendices and a glossary to this book. The first appendix begins on page 169 in a 240-page book. So you're talking about 70 pages more than 70 more than a third of the book is appendices. That's pretty amazing. Now there's handouts, let's say appendices and glossary, because we've got some cutouts at the end, right? Kind of like cheat sheets. Make it easier to run the game sheets. There we go. They put their, because you can remove them, plus they expect people will lose them. They'll wind up in various hands, other hands, non-player characters. These are just quick reference sheets. At the end, we got a little bit of advertising on a couple of pages, page and a half there. Lovely. Oop. The illustration there. I always liked this one, the Onkeg. Onkeg? How do you pronounce it? Chasing off a farmer. Ooh, that's dirty. We've got the glossary. So we get the index, the glossary. Takes us back to 227 out of 240, about 13 pages. And then we're into the appendices. And we're going backwards, I know. Appendix P, creating a party on the spur of a moment. How many people have used this? These are quick rules for throwing together a party, figuring out what sort of stuff they have, right? You could do a whole book of just parties you created. Encumbrance of standard items. There's all the details on that. Reading for inspiration, Appendix N. Everybody knows that one, right? Not everyone has an eyeglass. Has you ever used a random encounter charts to specifically populate areas? Yeah, I have. I have used it as a base with inhabited patrol areas to allow what creatures the PCs may be familiar with at the start of the game. Anything from wilderness areas are complete unknowns to them until the adventure. Yeah, no doubt. The appendices are the best in the DMG, absolutely. Reading the DMG out of sequence is the proper way to read it. I don't doubt it that a lot of people, myself included, when we first got this in 79, 78, 78, that we were 78, 79, 79, 78 Player's Handbook, Monster Manual in 77. When we first got this, we definitely looked at it out of order. Summoned monsters, so this helps you fresh and salt water. Lists for that. Summoned monsters for dry land. Conjured animals table. Flightless bird. He could be a big help if you want to beak someone to death. Hit die category. There you go. Flightless bird. So we're including chickens, probably turkeys, penguins, depending on the climate, right? Conjured animals. Lovely. Appendix K. Describing magical substances. Here's a fun one. It's just this just piles on the adjectives for you, right? Something is transparent. Its amount of transparency can vary. Clear, flecked, layered, luminous, opaline, phosphorescent, rainbowed, ribboned, variegated. All right. Tastes and odors. There's a big old pile of adjectives for you. Peridans are cool. Yeah, Alexfire. Especially when the group sees them flying at a distance without much detail. Sure. You don't know what's out there, right? If the horns are not easily discerned from the distance. 1979, a little earlier, if you had Dragon 22 with the sneak preview of combat tables. Yeah, that's fair. We were definitely looking at the sneak preview stuff before it came out, mostly because one of the guys that was in our group that also DM'd, who was really our main DM, would get Dragon Magazine and would share stuff with us. We'd always read them, you know. And yeah, it was starting to incorporate. I mean, we knew it was on the horizon, obviously, because we had all gotten the Monster Manual, and there was stuff in there that was not in original D&D. That's what this thing above my head's all about, right? Is we played original, and then we incorporated stuff from advanced D&D into our games as we went along. Thinking of the appendix section was the last minute addition to fill out the DMG, or was by design to focus the reader? I'm pretty sure that most, if not all, of the stuff that is in the appendices were designed to be part of the appendices. To incorporate as many tables and lists as appear in the appendices into some sort of a narrative chapter would have been doing that material a disservice and making it harder to work with. And as such, with you keeping it in the format of being tables and lists, such as it is, then it could only be part of an appendix. Each one of these herbs, spices, medicinal vegetables, and Appendix J. Lovely. My favorite is, of course, the dungeon dressing. I tell you, take any time you're writing up an adventure, take 5 minutes and just reread through all of the dungeon dressing section. Now, if you're play testing something, you may want to slim down your use of this during playtest sections so as not to overly divert the attention of the players if you're trying to churn through something. Um, if you've got all the time in the world and you can play multiple sessions of a game while playtesting, then by all means, throw it all in there. Let them take 10 minutes of their game time checking out the branding irons and see if they can act as keys in a crack in the wall that they suspect might be a keyhole. Let them let them agonize over a pentagram that was carved into the top of a desk, not knowing that it wasn't the original owner who had done that, but some orc who had wandered in here many years later after it had been abandoned and was just waiting for his captain to come back and tell him he didn't need to guard this room anymore. And he just got bored and started carving into the desk. You know, there are all sorts of little extras you can put into your games that the players may never know the history of or the details of, but they're fun for you, and they are an explanation of what has happened. And if you're sharing this material with someone else, like I do sometimes, then it's nice to have those little extras that only the person who reads it and runs that adventure is privy to, because that puts you and that person into a special club that players will never enter. And that's okay. I'm not saying it's I'm not saying you should act superior about it. I am saying you should feel special. It's nice to know these little extras. Yeah, the deviltry is in the details. Indeed. Absolutely. Oh, I'm just noticing the clock on the wall and we're a little over. That's okay. This was a fun little thing. I ranted earlier about how I run games, and that's all right, because that stuff needs to be done at some point. And it was fun going through the back end of the DMG and just looking at stuff. Dungeon dressings. Take some time today and read that section, that appendix again. It's pretty tasty, as they say. And not to get all fast times on you, but it is tasty. That's a good word for describing the appendices of the Dungeon Master's Guide. So there you go. Anywho, I want to thank everybody who's been coming out and been enjoying the shows. Don't forget, if you are out here and you do follow the channel, then by all means take the time to chime in on the stream chat, because then we add you to a little list, and when you're on that list, you're eligible to be chosen once a week for something that we're giving away. And we got Lexmire, Brenda Wolf, there you go. I think it's just you two chiming in today so far. Okay. And want to make sure you get on the new week's list, because Indeed, there is a new week's list. So I'll say once again, thanks to everybody who's following the channel and who's chiming in when they get the chance. I appreciate it. Also, if you are not doing anything tomorrow at 9:30 a.m., come on back. We're going to do the weekly news and announcements, including who got the giveaway from last week. It's a person who's already been chosen. I'm waiting for them to respond to my query. It's possible that they may not need it or want it, in which case I'll choose a new person, so I won't reveal who that person is until I've talked to them. Until they respond to my message. Anyway, that's Monday, but on Tuesday it's cartography and world building, campaign discussion on Wednesday, GMing tips on Thursday, building adventures on Friday, GM reviews on Saturday, and then background the horn to rules retrospective every Sunday. If you're catching up with this on YouTube, please do subscribe to the channel and be sure to give us a little thumbs up. And if you have some constructive criticism, please do feel free to make mention of it in the comment section, because that could be helpful to the show, and I appreciate that. Well, thank you very much, everybody, whether you're live or later. I will be back tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. and every day from beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Bye-bye.